Blockade's been amazing. It's like a piece of steel. Nobody's going to challenge the blockade.
You can't print the diesel that moves your trucks. You can't print the fertilizer that grows your crops. You can't print the natural gas that powers your factories. It's going to be hell to pay here inside the United States.
Nobody in Washington is saying this out loud. Welcome back to ARM Geopolitics. I'm Aaron Johnson, and on this channel, we don't just cover the news. We cut through the noise, dominate the narrative, and give you the analysis mainstream media is too scared to run. Vigilance is our shield, truth is our weapon. Let's get into it. Here's the gap I want you to sit with before we start. One side, the President of the United States standing in the Oval Office saying the blockade is amazing, like a piece of steel. The Secretary of Defense talking about a red, white, and blue shield. The Chairman of the Joint Chiefs describing 100 aircraft in the air 24 hours a day. On the other side, 0 ships got through on day 1 of Project Freedom. Only 2 had passed on Monday. Tuesday, standstill. US gasoline stocks are at the lowest level ever recorded at this point in the year, and 70% of American farmers reportedly cannot afford to buy fertilizer. Colonel Douglas Macgregor, a decorated combat veteran, former Pentagon advisor, spent an hour with Daniel Davis going through the numbers. Not the rhetoric, the numbers. And what he laid out is a picture of the domestic consequences of this war that I don't think most Americans have seen assembled in one place. That's today. Let's start with the official version, because before you can understand what Macgregor is responding to, you need to hear exactly what the administration is claiming.
Blockade's been amazing. It's like a piece of steel. Nobody's going to challenge the blockade. And I think it's working out very well. We're going to see. I can say this, Iran wants to make a deal. When your military is totally gone, we could do anything we want to them. Who wouldn't?
Washington and Hollywood tend to run on hot air and empty political slogans, but the rest of the world runs on diesel, gasoline, liquefied natural gas, and so forth. The rest of the world is not doing so hot. And in fact, we're not doing so hot here at home.
According to the New York Times, nothing has gone through to the Strait itself remains effectively closed. Only 2 ships were known to have passed through the waterway on Monday, and on Tuesday, traffic appeared at a standstill.
Amazing. Like a piece of steel. 0 ships on day 1, 2 on Monday. Standstill Tuesday. Macgregor's first point is simple. When oil prices dip briefly after a presidential statement, that's not evidence the blockade is working. That's evidence Wall Street is responding to rhetoric, not military reality. The numbers that matter is ships through the Strait. And that number is essentially 0. And what the market is missing, what the official messaging is designed to obscure, is what Macgregor gets to next. But Macgregor doesn't just point out the gap between words and results. He identifies something more fundamental. The entire operation is internally contradictory. And his question is one nobody at the Pentagon press conference asked.
Well, Israel began the war with its strikes on Iran, and we followed rapidly behind Israel. Ultimately, at Israel's insistence, or it's the insistence of its agents in the United States and the Israel lobby. So we can say pretty conclusively, we are the aggressors. We started the war. Now it sounds like Mr. Hegseth, on orders from President Trump, is sending a new message. Well, we really don't want a war anymore. We really want to just get along. But if you want to get along with us, you have to accept our demands. And most important, you have to open the Strait. Well, what are we doing with a blockade? If the Strait is closed by the Iranians, why do we need a blockade? It seems like a silly notion. If they've already closed the place, why are you blockading it? Oh, well, we want to keep ships from getting in that might help or assist Iran in some way. Well, that's another aggressive anti-Iranian action. Look, this whole thing defies logic. There is no rationality. There is no strategy. There was no problem with the Strait of Hormuz until we started the war. And inevitably, it was not Iran, but Lloyd's of London that shut down the Strait. And right now, it's very difficult to get insurance for any of those tankers. And most of the insurance is being provided by the nation states themselves, insuring these vessels. Otherwise, frankly speaking, they couldn't move. But in the meantime, the Japanese, the Koreans, the Indians, Chinese have all made separate arrangements with Iran to move tankers out of the Gulf. So who's keeping them in there?
On the "we are the aggressors" framing, Macgregor is stating a documented analytical position consistent with the timeline. The US and Israel struck first on February 28th. I'm flagging it as his assessment, not adopting the full moral framing. But his core logical question is the one worth focusing on. If Iran has already closed the Strait, what exactly is the US blockade accomplishing? If the goal is to reopen the Strait, adding another layer of blockade on top of an existing closure doesn't help. And the real mechanism that closed the Strait wasn't purely Iranian military action. It was Lloyd's of London, the global insurance market. When no insurer will cover a vessel in an active war zone, ships stop moving. The physical reality preceded the political narrative. And Macgregor's last point here, Japan, South Korea, India, China have all made separate arrangements with Iran to move their tankers. So who exactly is the blockade keeping in? And for whose benefit? While the blockade debate plays out in Washington, something else is happening that changes the strategic picture entirely. Macgregor flags it as one of the most underreported developments in the conflict.
It's not just China's resistance to what we're trying to do to them and to the business partners they have around the world. You've also got the port, and I'm not sure about the pronunciation. It's on the Pakistani coast that lies on the Indian Ocean, called Gwandar or Gwandahar. And this port was built literally at the cost of several billion dollars by China. And this port is top of the line in terms of its modernization and its capability. That port is outside of the Persian Gulf, and it's roughly 54 to 55 miles from the border with Iran. Trucks can move anything that comes into that port in Pakistan along that road straight into Iran. And that's what's happening. And at the same time, now the question that will come up undoubtedly is the United States Navy going to now blockade that port, which is a Pakistani port? Or are we going to actually attack that lifeline that is being built from that port up into Iran? I would say those are very dangerous things to do, because that could bring you into direct military confrontation with China. But the bottom line is that China is not abandoning Iran. But I think the view in Beijing, and increasingly the view in Moscow, is that if you don't stand up to the United States at this point, and you don't back the people who are resisting them, the United States are going to turn on others, and eventually the United States is going to turn on you. So I see no end to this that is going to be profitable or advantageous for us.
Gwadar Port, note that Macgregor struggles with the pronunciation in the video. The correct spelling is Gwadar on Pakistan's Balochistan coast. China built this port as part of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Billions of dollars invested on the Indian Ocean, entirely outside the Persian Gulf. It sits roughly 55 miles from the Iranian border. Trucks can move goods directly from that port into Iran along an existing road, which means the US naval blockade of the Persian Gulf is being circumvented over land through Pakistan via a Chinese-built port. If the US tried to extend the blockade to Gwadar, a Pakistani sovereign port, it risks direct confrontation with China. That's not theoretical. China has already formally activated its 2021 anti-sanctions law. The financial confrontation is underway. And Macgregor's read on Beijing's logic, if we don't stand up now, they'll come for us next, is the same calculation explaining why both Russia and China are backing Iran despite the economic cost to themselves. Even if the blockade were somehow working logistically, which it isn't, Macgregor's next argument is that the pressure isn't symmetric. Iran can endure this longer than America can. And he connects that directly to a failure of presidential leadership.
And this is from Ghalibaf on his X account. Really important, I think, here. He said the new equation, the Strait of Hormuz, is in the process of being solidified. So they have no intent, and every person that I've either read or talked to on the Iranian side says that it's not even up for negotiation or debate. They will retain control of the Strait, which he seems to imply here. The security of shipping and energy transit has been jeopardized by the United States and its allies, so he's certainly blaming us for, of course, we started the war through the violation of the ceasefire and the imposition of a blockade. Of course, their evil will diminish. Then he says the important thing here, we know full well that the continuation of the status quo is intolerable for America while we have not yet even begun.
No, I think he's right, but there's something else that nobody bothers to bring up, Dan. When has President Trump gone to the American people and articulated in detail what's at stake for us in this war? When has he talked to the American people and said, we are going to war on behalf of Israel? We're doing it for the following strategic reasons that are valid, that make a difference to our lives. And we are attacking to destroy Iran because Iran's destruction will strategically benefit the United States in some way. He's never made the case because there is no case to be made for those things. You know, when FDR did many things, and I didn't agree with it, I wasn't there, but I wouldn't have agreed with much of what he did. But on the other hand, he was very good at going to the American people and making the case. Even Lyndon Johnson made a stab at it. He wasn't very good at it, but he made a stab at it. Certainly President Nixon found it necessary, and he did it, and that's one of the reasons he was reelected in a landslide. What's this president doing? He's not doing his job as president, leading this country. That's the biggest issue right now.
2 points here that deserve separate treatment. On the asymmetry, Iran reportedly has 80 to 90% domestic food self-sufficiency. They've been under sanctions for 47 years. They've built workarounds for almost every pressure the US has applied. The Iranian official Davis is citing, likely Ghalibaf, Speaker of the Parliament, though Davis's pronunciation is unclear in the transcript, is saying plainly, this hurts you more than it hurts us. And we haven't even started retaliating in full. Macgregor agrees with that assessment. And based on the numbers, gasoline stocks at historic lows, farmers who can't afford fertilizer, reserves being drawn down, the arithmetic supports him. On the presidential accountability argument, Macgregor isn't making a partisan attack. He is making an observation about leadership. FDR explained Pearl Harbor. LBJ explained Vietnam. Badly, but he tried. Nixon explained his decisions. Every wartime president has gone before the American people and made the public case for why American lives and treasure are being committed. Trump hasn't done this. Macgregor says the reason is there's no coherent case to make. Whether you agree with that conclusion or not, the absence of a public accounting is itself a documented fact, and it matters. This is the section that matters most for ordinary Americans, because everything we've talked about, blockade strategy, China routing around it, Iran outlasting us, it's all abstract until it hits the gas pump, in the grocery bill, in the heating bill. Macgregor is unusually direct.
I think what everybody is learning is a very hard lesson, Dan. Remember, we used to hear everybody talk about just-in-time logistics. I think that's going to change now. We're talking about just-in-case logistics, where boardrooms become war rooms, and everybody is going to stockpile everything from oil to rare earths, preferably refined rare earths, and all forms of liquefied natural gas and other things, uranium. We go down the list, phosphates, aluminum, so forth. I think everybody is going to start down this road of just-in-case logistics, because if you don't, you have no control over the destiny of your own country, because the countries all run on the same thing. It's called energy. And for energy to be efficient and effective and keep your society healthy, it has to be cheap. It was cheap. We've now made it prohibitively expensive. none of this is going to work. And again, you can't print the diesel that moves your trucks. You can't print the fertilizer that grows your crops. You can't print the natural gas that powers your factories. So America had better wake up. We better find a way around this or out of it, because our business strategies cannot easily account for physical scarcity of food, feed, fuel, and fertilizer caused by these shipping closures. You know, this is a catastrophe. It's a catastrophe on a global level. It hasn't hit us dramatically yet, but you and I know over the next 60 days, it's going to be hell to pay here inside the United States. Well, Americans aren't aware of it, but 70% of our farmers have already said they can't even afford to buy fertilizer anymore. That's how high the price of fertilizer has risen. Now, the president was warned about this, believe it or not, back in March. And what happened? He ignored it. President Trump has a habit of ignoring things that don't conform to his expectation.
Let me put the domestic picture together in one place. Oil up roughly 82% since the war started. US gasoline stocks at the lowest level ever recorded for this point in the year. And summer driving season hasn't even started yet. Strategic petroleum reserve being drawn down to cover the gap. 70% of farmers reportedly cannot afford fertilizer at current prices. And Macgregor warns that bond yields approaching 5% on the 10-year could trigger a system-level financial event. You can't print the diesel that moves your trucks. You can't print the fertilizer that grows your crops. You can't print the natural gas that powers your factories. This is the America First case against this war, stated in purely physical terms. Not ideology, not foreign policy theory. Physics. The physical input the American economy runs on. Energy, fertilizer, food are being made more expensive and less available by a conflict that was started without a public strategy rationale, and without the president going before the American people to explain why it's worth the cost. And the people who pay for it, they aren't in the think tanks, in the editorial boards that supported this. It's the farmers who can't afford to plant. It's the drivers paying more at the pump every week. It's the families on fixed incomes watching food prices climb. That's not abstract. That's the bill for this war. And it's coming due. So where does this end? Macgregor lays out Trump's remaining choices, and like most of the analysis in this series, they all close the same way.
Choices. One is suspend all operations. Say, gosh, guess we were wrong. Military power won't work. We're going to have to find a different way forward. And until then, we're disengaging so the rest of the world can get on with the business it needs, and it needs energy. Choice number two is we go back to trying to destroy the Iranian state. Which one? Where are we headed? Which happens first? Do we collapse financially here at home first? Or do we essentially recognize the futility of our military operations overseas first? I don't have an answer to that. I have this terrible sinking feeling it's going to happen simultaneously. We're going to have an example of this coming up shortly. We're going to wake up. I don't know if it'll be in June or July or maybe earlier. We're going to wake up and discover that the stock market has lost 40, 50, 60% of its value. And anybody you want to pick will talk about this, whether it's Luke Groman or Ray Dalio, any number of people that have looked at this carefully and they know it's coming. So that could happen anytime. And at the same time, you're right. Most of these exotic munitions, these precision-guided weapons and missiles, they're going to be exhausted in the space of anywhere from 5 days to 10 days, unless you start ratcheting back or reducing your operational tempo. So you want a clear answer which is going to happen first? I don't know, but they're both going to happen, I think. Because I still don't see how President Trump does not escalate at this point. Because the alternative for him is humiliation. Blockade is really kind of interesting because He's imposing the blockade, and then he's blaming it all on Iran. But Iran could always make the argument, if you stop blockading us and allow us to utilize the Strait and get back to business, everything will be fine. So if you're sitting in Japan or Vietnam or Thailand or Indonesia or somewhere in Europe, whom do you believe? Do you believe Trump, who's blockading it and essentially constipating an already disrupted system? Or do you believe the Iranians, who say, well, if they'll stop the blockade, we'll let everybody go?
Macgregor's endgame. Two choices: exit with humiliation or escalate into something worse. His read is that Trump will escalate because retreat means admitting failure. I want to be clear about the financial scenario he describes. Stock market losing 40 to 60%. Munitions exhausted in 5 to 10 days simultaneously. These are Macgregor's predictions, not confirmed outcomes. But the inputs he's pointing to are real. They are documented. Precision weapon stockpiles at documented low levels. Gasoline reserves at historic lows. Bond markets under pressure. On who has the most coherent message internationally? If you're Japan or South Korea or Germany, suffering economically from this war, and Iran is saying, stop the US blockade and we'll reopen the Strait. While America says the blockade is amazing, but 0 ships are getting through. Based on the numbers, Iran's message is the more credible one right now. And Macgregor goes further than I'm going to follow him on one specific one. He frames this entire operation as serving Israeli regional ambitions. His words are, Project Freedom has nothing to do with the Strait. It's all about Greater Israel. That's a claim that goes beyond what I can document here today. What I can say, and what we've covered in detail in previous analysis, is that there is a documented structural misalignment between Israeli strategic objectives and American national interests. The lobby question is real and documented. So I'll leave it at that. What I take away from this conversation: Macgregor is making a case that this war is failing on every level simultaneously. Strategically, logically, financially, and domestically. The official messaging is actively making it worse by giving the public a false signal. When the president says the blockade is like a piece of steel, on the same day, 0 ships get through. And the market dips because people believe him. That's not a communication success. That's a false signal that delays the correction that's needed. The America First argument here isn't ideological, it's physical. Diesel, fertilizer, natural gas, food. These are the inputs that American economy runs on. They are being made more expensive and less available by a conflict that was started without a public strategic rationale, without the president going before the American people and explaining, as every wartime president has done before him, why is this worth the cost? Macgregor has his own views on October 7th and Israel's broader regional ambitions that I note without adopting wholesale. Those claims are contested and require more documented evidence than I have in front of me. But his core economic and strategic analysis, the blockade defies logic, Iran can outlast America, the domestic consequences are real and accelerating. That analysis is grounded in verifiable numbers that nobody in Washington is seriously contesting. The bill for this war is coming due, and the people paying it are not the people who decided to start it. Macgregor states both things that could end this: financial collapse and munitions exhaustion. And they may happen simultaneously. And that Trump will likely escalate rather than accept humiliation. Here's what I want to know. At what point does the domestic economic pain, gas prices, food prices, fertilizer costs, become the political variable that actually forces a change in direction? Is there a number, a breaking point? And who in Washington is actually tracking these domestic indicators instead of the rhetoric? Because Macgregor thinks the reckoning is coming in the next 60 days. I want the argument. As always, comments are open. This is ARM Geopolitics. I'm Aaron Johnson. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never stop questioning. I'll see you in the next one.